In terms of damage with this system, the water would probably be 80%. The wind might be 15%. Maybe the freshwater flooding might be 5%. So it's all about the surge. But in terms of the wind, we've got two things to cover. I'll start with the wind, and Jason can talk about the track and the water. Because overall, when you get this system, as it's getting closer, it is going to spread the highest wind that it has right near the eye. We've been saying 5 to 7 miles for the last couple of days, and I'm certainly not going to change now. Hurricane force winds extend 35 miles out, all right? The extreme winds, maybe 5 or 6 miles. But in those extreme winds, you could see winds of 90, 95, maybe even a little higher. Now, there is a possibility, and it's just a possibility, there's a possibility that the Hurricane Center or the local weather service actually would issue this. It's called an extreme wind warning. And Mike Paluska just mentioned it. And for the life of me, Jason and I still don't know how he knew that. Because we're like, someone texted you that. So an extreme wind warning means winds of 115 miles an hour, sustained. So it is the real deal. Now, there was an extreme wind warning in Bartow with Irma. I remember that because you had this giant hurricane coming in from the south. And none of the area had sustained hurricane force winds. But when it got into Polk County, right around Bartow, we had about a 20-minute stretch where the winds just went nuts, and we had the extreme wind warning issued. So if you get an alert, this is my point. If that were to happen, it would probably be somewhere between southern Pinellas, southwestern Hillsborough, or northwestern Manatee. Probably in that area if it were to happen. If you get an alert on your phone or you hear us talking about it, that is every bit as dangerous as a tornado warning in your area. Extreme wind warnings are the real deal. So if you were to see that, you want to immediately act. There's the eye. We've been saying this for a while now. You can literally split the storm in half. If this were to move through your area at night tonight, and you live south of where this eye is, I've been saying this for a few days, you'll likely see stars. There'll be very little rain. There's still going to be wind, but there will be very, very little rain, and there will be breaks in that cloud cover. So, boy, I'm looking over at that picture. Look at the, guys, can you take Max 1? Look at the picture of the Hyatt in Clearwater here.
It's barely hanging on.
Yeah, check it out. Check out Max 1, guys. There you go. I mean, that's right now.
Pier 60's down there. Just hard to see.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely coming in, and let's go back to me, because what are we looking at? Right there. So there's your storm. There's the eye. Most of the wind right there. The extreme wind right there, coming up close on Sarasota. But what's really noteworthy about this storm is all of the squally weather is at or north of the center. Now remember, this is spinning counterclockwise. So all this red right here is moving away, but there's still a lot over here. And that red, that's just heavy rain. So overall, I talked about the freshwater flooding issues. There's already flash flood warnings in effect. And there will be more heavy rain for hours to come. So we've covered the rain. We've talked about the surge factors, and again, I want to address the surge in the sense that if this storm gets up to around the Skyway, there's bound to be higher surge in the Bay. The Hurricane Center did bump down the surge forecast. For days, we've been saying that 10 to 15 is just not going to happen. But here's why they do it, and it makes sense. The goal of the Hurricane Center is to keep you safe. It's to get the weather right, obviously, but it's to keep you safe and to make sure, darn sure, that you are informed, that everything that they know, you know, so you can decide how to keep your family safe. Right now, if you're watching, you're probably hunkered down. Maybe you've got shutters up. Maybe you have plywood up. Maybe you didn't do any of that and you're just hanging in. Maybe you regret not putting up the shutters, or maybe you just didn't have the opportunity to do so. But the point is, we're all here watching this come in, and you based your decision on all your information, right? Everything, you heard it here. You heard it on social media. You heard your neighbors talking about it. Everybody was talking about what was going to happen. And then you made your decision. Well, the Hurricane Center's goal is we're going to tell them the worst case that they could possibly see, and then they make their decision. Because even if it isn't that bad, we would much rather them prepare for the worst and it doesn't happen than to underprepare and you get hit blindsided. So that is why you saw those numbers of 10 to 15 feet the last few days. When you heard Greg and you heard me and Jason and Shay saying, yeah, we're going to share what the Hurricane Center went with, but we really don't think they're going to see those high of numbers. Now they've come down to 6 to 9 feet. That is a very reasonable forecast. And Greg and I were talking, some of the models are hinting that the highest surge in the bay will be on the south side of the bay, as opposed to the north side. So that's something else we'll have to watch closely. But overall, when you look at these storms, it's humbling in this sense that, we have this technology, we have this experience, we feel like we're pretty good at what we do in forecasting the weather the best that we can. And yet, when a storm gets this close, we're no different than you. We're looking at that. Hey, look, it looks like it went a little right. Hey, look, it looks a little left. It's called nowcasting. In other words, it's looking out the window. And that's what I always say. You throw the models out the window and you look out the window and you're 4 or 5 hours out. Well, Jason just noticed something. We were talking about this. It looks like there's another wobble. Now, I don't want to be a dog chasing my tail, and every single time there's a move, oh, look, it went here. I'll never forget, I was watching a national weather guy as the storm was coming into Houston years ago. He's like, oh, look, there's a significant turn. It was a little wobble. And it wasn't a turn, and it went right back again the next 15, 20 minutes. So we don't want to misinform you with a wobble that is not a trend. It's just a short-term thing. But Jason, it's certainly something that we noted. And the reason it's important is because 10 miles, and we're talking about a storm that's 1,000 miles away, and it boils down to a 10-mile wobble, which realistically, and I talked about this a little while ago, and I'll bring it up one more time. A buddy of mine's well-connected in the insurance industry, a meteorologist, and knows about loss, and that's kind of what he deals with in terms of loss from natural disasters. And he was telling me that landfall in Sarasota would be $100 billion in damage if it were a Cat 4 staying at a Cat 4 or higher. He said landfall in the Bay at a Cat 4 or higher is $175 billion. The only storm with more would have been Katrina. More than Ian, more than anything. So when we talk about a 10-mile difference, that 10 miles is going into the bay and bringing that water up in the bay as opposed to moving into an area that might have less of an impact, at least for the number of people. But let me be clear before I toss it over to Jason. It's very significant that the Hurricane Center dropped that 10 to 15 foot prediction down to 6 to 9. I know it's still a scary sound, and it is. It's comparable to what Helene did, and Helene destroyed a lot of property and ruined a lot of lives. But at least it's headed in the right direction, and the storm is weakening. And it's wobbling too. Jason, what do you got on that?